Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going deep on something that I think has bothered people for a long time, like centuries.
Yeah.
It's this whole idea of how can God, if he's really good and all-powerful, let bad stuff happen?
Right.
Not just exist, but like sometimes it really seems like evil is winning.
Oh, for sure.
And, you listeners have sent in some really interesting stuff that looks at just that problem,
Yeah.
using examples from history and even some recent things to try and understand this whole dilemma.
Yeah, it's fascinating. One of the sources actually suggests that maybe the problem isn't that God can't stop evil,
Hmm?
but that he lets it happen.
So it's not that he's powerless against it, but he
Yeah.
allows it.
Yeah, exactly. And the source uses this really interesting comparison from a Chinese book, Journey to the West. You ever heard of it?
Oh, yeah, love that story.
Sun Wukong, right?
Yeah, the monkey ping.
Yeah.
So he thinks he's totally free of the Buddha, like he's flown thousands of miles away.
Right.
But then he finds out he's actually been in Buddha's hand the whole time. Wow, that's such a great picture of it. It's like even when evil seems to be winning, it's still within God's control.
Exactly.
But then why would God allow it at all?
Well, that's the big question, right? The source talks about a few possibilities. One is that God is merciful.
Okay,
He wants people to turn back to him, not just be punished.
makes me think of that story of the prodigal son.
Oh, totally.
The father welcomes him back no matter what.
Exactly. Unconditional love. And it shows that God might let evil go on because he's always waiting for people to come back to him.
That's really beautiful.
But there's another idea the source brings up. God might actually use evil things to achieve his goals.
Ooh, now that's a tough one. Are there like examples of that in history?
Well, think about the story of the Exodus. God made Pharaoh stubborn, which ultimately led to the Israelites being freed from Egypt.
Right, right.
It seems harsh, but it brought freedom to God's people.
So even something that seems bad can actually be part of a bigger good plan. So if we can't always tell what's good or bad just by looking at it, how do we know what God really wants?
Well, the source emphasizes the Bible.
Yeah, makes
It
sense.
says that's the ultimate guide. And it gives us 3 tests to use.
Okay, I'm listening. What's the first one?
The first is whether the teaching or movement agrees with the main things the Bible teaches.
Right, the core stuff.
Yeah. Like, does it go against basic Christian beliefs?
Got it. So it's like a compatibility check.
Yeah. Now, the second test is about Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Does it accurately portray who he is and what he did?
Makes sense. So no twisting his words or anything.
Right. And the third test is all about Scripture itself.
Okay.
Does it respect the Bible and interpret it correctly?
So we're looking at how it uses the Bible, not just if it mentions it.
Yeah, exactly. Because some groups might twist verses to fit their agenda.
Right, right. It seems like these 3 tests give us a good way to see if something lines up with God's will.
Yeah, it's a good framework, but the source doesn't stop there.
What else is there?
It talks about looking at the fruits of a teaching or movement.
Okay, now what does that mean exactly?
It means looking beyond just the words. You got to see what it produces, what impact it has.
So like what kind of actions come from those beliefs?
Exactly. Does it lead to love for God and others? Does it help spread the gospel? Does it help people turn away from sin?
So it's about how people actually live, not just what they say.
Absolutely. If something claims to be from God, but it has bad results, that's a big red flag.
Makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we know if something is truly of God in the long run?
Well, the source talks about this guy named Gamaliel from the book of Acts.
Gamaliel, remind me who he was again.
He was this respected teacher, a Pharisee. When the early Christians were starting out, he told the Jewish leaders to wait and see what would happen.
Interesting.
He said if their movement wasn't from God, it would just disappear on its own. But if it was really from God, nothing could stop it.
So instead of jumping to conclusions, he said to observe and see how things played out.
Exactly.
Does the source have any modern examples of this?
It does. It talks about the fall of this guy, JMS.
JMS. Who's that?
He was a Korean cult leader who was recently put in prison after, decades of leading this group.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that just because something lasts a long time doesn't mean it's actually from God.
Right. So longevity doesn't equal legitimacy.
Exactly. And then the source contrasts that with the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, well,
Even though he was assassinated, the civil rights movement kept growing.
powerful example.
It shows that movements based on God's will can overcome huge obstacles.
Both of those examples,
Yeah.
JMS and MLK, point back to God being in control.
Yeah, it's all about God's sovereignty. He's ultimately running things, even when things seem messy or unfair.
It is reassuring.
Evil might seem to win for a bit, but God will make things right in the end.
That's a comforting thought. So, just to sum up, evil existing doesn't mean God isn't in control.
Right.
And to figure out what's really from God, we need to look at the Bible and the results of those teachings.
Yeah, the fruits they bear.